What's going on, everybody? Rodrigo Fonador with Asheville Cash Buyers bringing you another episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. Today, in episode number 35, we are talking about dual agency. All right, so what's dual agency? Dual agency is where there's either one agent or the same brokerage that is representing both the seller and the buyer in a transaction. So what does that mean? If it's the same agent, that's pretty easy. Agent Smith is representing both Mr. Bob and Miss Jane. Mr. Bob is the seller, Miss Jane's the buyer, and Agent Smith is representing both of them on the transaction. And then it can also occur, dual agency can also occur when it's the same brokerage. So let's just call it ABC Brokerage. That would be like a real estate company. Has, Agent Bob, who's the listing agent, and then Agent Tom, who's going to be the buyer's agent. And that can still be a dual agency situation because Tom and Bob, they work under the same company or they're under the same umbrella. And that means that, they could, they're basically the same agencies, so they could be working together in that sense. What do you need to be aware about? Basically, one of the benefits of working with the real estate agent is that you have somebody who has your back, who's got a fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interests, to be 100% aware of what's going on and making sure that you, as their client, is getting the best possible deal available to them. So, in essence, that in and of itself is why there can be some negative light thrown on dual agency. In what sense? Well, if you've got one agent, let's draw this out. It is Whiteboard Wednesday. Let's get something on the whiteboard. So here's the house, and it's the listing, okay? And then you got buyer over here. And then you got your seller over here, right? When you're represented by the same agent, this is a dual agent. I have no idea if you guys can even see this, but the agent in the house, when he's representing both the seller and the buyer, it's impossible for him to negotiate in the best interest of both parties at the same time, or in the best interest of either party. So what does that mean? How would this play out? Say the seller has a listing agent and I'm the buyer, and I go and look at it and I'm like, oh, I really like this property. What if I ask questions in regards to, hey, do you know why they're selling? Do you know what they might be willing to take? Are there any pressure points I should be aware of? The listing agent can't answer those questions for me, even if they're acting for me as a buyer's agent. So they can't go to bat on my behalf. They can't be like, hey, my gut says you could offer 10% of list price just because of XYZ. Because then they're not acting in the best interest of the seller. Because the best interest of the seller is getting the highest possible price. The best interest in the buyer is going to be getting the lowest possible price. Are there a couple of exceptions to that? Yes. But in essence, sellers want to get the highest price, buyers want to get the lowest price. How does one person who's representing both parties really do that well? That's the dilemma. That being said, there's also some really good benefits for being a dual agency. All right, so what's the biggest benefit of having dual agency is this right here, folks. Smooth transaction is the biggest benefit of having dual agency. Why is that the case? Because you don't have to have as many moving parts or as many cooks in the kitchen, as they say. If the buyer has a question, he can ask their agent, and if the agent already knows the answer, they can answer right away. Any paperwork that has to get signed by both buyer and seller, it's going to be a lot more easily facilitated when there's only one party involved representing or working with both buyer and seller. So that's the main dichotomy that you can have with dual agency. I'm going to just check my notes really quick. I want to make sure that I include everything that's very important. So there you have it, folks. This is essentially the best thing. One other thing I can touch on, I'm going to kind of gloss over this a little quickly, but is the concept of commissions. If there's dual agencies, not always, but many times, the seller can save a little bit on their commission because sometimes the agent will only charge, say, here in North Carolina, say 5.5% or 5%. Since they're already getting both sides of the commission, they'll save a little bit for their client. So hope that makes sense to you all. If you have any questions, just let us know below. Share this with a friend if they're running into this situation when they're selling their house. And hope to see you all next week on another episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. What do you think?
I thought it was good.